who's going to bring us the message this morning.
Good morning. It's nice to see you all. So for any of you in the room that don't know me, I'm Josh. I've been coming to Liberty since I was about 13, which is about 14, 15 years ago. This is me, 13-year-old Josh. It's a lovely picture. It's my favourite. 14, 15 years ago. I know what you're thinking. I am younger than I look. It's normally the other way around, isn't it? But now I'm all grown up, no longer look like that, and I look like this. But thanks to my wife, we've made some pretty good-looking kids, which is what's on the screen now. Vinny and Millie and Lucy, my wife. So for those of you that can remember, I spoke back in March, and my title was Fear Factor. Spoke about our relationship with fear and how we can take hold of that and give that to God. But to carry on with that theme of fear, and I made some jokes about my fears of healthy eating and the gym. So to carry on with that theme of the gym and self-deprecation, my title today is Afraid to Fail. So I'd like to start with a question. I think the obvious one would be, who's afraid to fail? Or perhaps the other one would be, who avoids failure? But my question today is going to be a little bit more niche, and I want to ask, are you training to failure? Now, I want to break that down a bit. Sometimes I think the simple questions are the ones that we think we know the answer to, so we just ignore it. Oh yeah, I know the answer to that, so we just breeze past it. But I think sometimes that means that we fail to dive in deeper to these simple questions and find out, why is it that I think that? Or am what I'm thinking correct? So the first question I've got is, what is training? Now, training, I think, is just doing something. Whether that's physical, going to the gym, going for a run, practicing sport. Emotional, putting ourselves in a situation where we feel emotionally vulnerable. Thinking about our feelings, which I think, men in here, perhaps we struggle to do. At least talking about them. Or intellectual, picking up a subject that we wouldn't normally talk about and talk about that amongst friends, or going back to school and studying and that kind of thing. It can be anything. It can be vast. We can train just to be smarter. Perhaps I should do that. Or to get a bit fitter. Or we can train specifics. And for example, I used to play rugby. I played rugby as a kid, and then I gave it up for a bit, and then I started coming to church, and Phil got me into playing senior rugby. And, and I was a prop. So for those of you that don't know what a prop is normally one of the bigger guys on the pitch. I know it's hard to believe. One of these front guys here. And my job mainly was to scrum. And I loved scrumming. Scrumming is the one thing that I miss the most about rugby. It's the thing that I lay in bed going, wish I could do that again. And for those of you that don't know what scrumming is, you basically stand together like this with 7 other players on your team, and you link arms and legs and soles. And you crouch and you bind with the other team who are doing it just not as good as you, and you smash into them really hard Well, not so much anymore. The rules have changed. You've got to be all delicate and give them a tickle as you go. But you push against each other. And you push back and forth, and blood vessels are popping, and your vertebrae are compressing, and it's amazing. And I love it. So, I suppose you could say, what's the point other than just to have a little chat about scrumming? I know what you're thinking, like, I just can't believe that our bodies aren't designed to contort into a strange position and have 3.5 ton either side of you pushing against you. I know it's hard to believe, but that is true. We're not designed for that. Our bodies aren't designed for that. Me and Phil can both vouch for the fact that, I didn't do it for as long as Phil, but even my body's a little bit knackered from that activity. So I had to train to be able to do that. I had to train physically. I had to get stronger so that I could push. I had to train to get fitter so that I was able to do that for extended periods of time. I had to train technique so that I could learn how to do things to be better than the other team. Some illegal, some legal within the game. But that's the beauty of training. We can be as broad or as specific as we like. The same can be said for anything that you're training. Emotion, or intellectually, or physically. So, we might not always want to train, but we need to. I can vouch for this in many different scenarios of my life, and it's unfortunate, actually, that we've got the youth up here today, because one of my points is, you might want to cover up your ears for this, I hated school. I hated school. I loved going to school with my friends. I hated learning, which is weird because now I love learning. I love, I don't like reading, but I love learning new things and having conversations with friends and picking up things. But as a kid, I hated school because I had to sit in a classroom, I had to listen to somebody who knew something more than me and just sit there and try and absorb it. And it was boring. But I needed to be there to train my brain, to learn, to get better. I love going to the gym. I hate getting myself to the gym. So much that I haven't been for a little while now. Not as long as you might be thinking, but... Or even, and this is going to sound silly, and you will all laugh, even though I'm trying to dumb it down now, but... Flat pack, the instructions. I hate reading the instructions for flat pack. I'm an engineer. I'm a fully qualified electrician. I hate reading instructions because I can put IKEA furniture together without having to read it. I cannot put IKEA furniture together without reading the instructions. But that sounds, and I'm saying it in jest, but it's true. It's training. It's teaching you how to put that bit of furniture together. So we need to do it. Because if we don't do it, we won't succeed in what we're trying to achieve. So next I want to ask, what is failure? If we're training to failure, what is failure? So I'm going to go to Google, because Google is always correct. Google definition for failure is a lack of success. It says a lack of success. I want to really home in on, it's a lack of success. It's not the absence of success, it's just a lack of success. It doesn't say that there's no success there. It doesn't say, when you fail, that's it, it's all done, you have not won. It says you are lacking some success. So, I've got a timeline here. No success. Success. Lack of success is failure. So all of this space between not winning and winning is failure. I think we become so obsessed with success that we become terrified of the failure. But like we've just discussed, failure isn't no success. It's just a lack of success. In fact, failure is not the opposite of success. It is just part of the success. I would say that the success in failure is the lesson. And it's worth noting here that I'm not talking about moral failure. I'm not saying that we can excuse or justify our sin or moral failure because it's part of the success. I don't want you going home and say, well, I can do this, because Josh said it's just part of the success. We don't have to fail morally to find success in that area, although it is worth noting it can happen too, but that isn't what I'm talking about today. And I just want to say, you have heard this a million times, and like I said at the beginning, this is simple. It's a simple concept. Like, none of you are probably sitting there going, oh, I didn't know. You will all know this already. In fact, you've heard a million times, learn from your mistakes. We've heard it a million times. We've heard it a million times as youth. We've heard it 400 million times as adults. Learn from your mistakes. So this isn't a new concept for any of you. I don't want to dive into what lessons can we learn from our mistakes or what lessons can we learn from failure. Just note that that is part of the journey, because the list could be endless. However, I want to focus on purposefully training to fail. Now, don't get this mixed up with setting yourself up for failure. This isn't what this is. This is pushing yourself to the point of failure. I'm talking about immersing yourself in it so much and trying to achieve it, even though there is a high likelihood of failing. Actually, it's quite fitting. Phil recently has been talking about choosing the wise option. And I want to say, if there's a possibility to pick success, choose success. Don't say, Josh said we have to be part of this failure journey, so I don't want to just do the thing straight away. I've got to make things a little bit more difficult for myself along the way. No, pick success if there's the option. Just don't be afraid to fail. Instead, invite the lessons that would be learned by failing. Now, just to dive into my life a little bit more, I can be quite obsessive. My wife will vouch for this. I love a fad diets, fad exercises. We was talking last night, I love trainers. I love trainers so much. I would buy every pair of trainers in the world if I had money, but I don't. And I have a wife who would kill me if I bought one pair of trainers. But for example, at the minute, I really like barbecuing. I'd do it in the winter if it wasn't like socially wrong to go out and barbecue in -1. So much that my Christmas list this year, Lucy and my mum and that, they say, what do you want for Christmas? I'd like a barbecue, I'd like some coal, I'd like spatulas, I'd like cuts of meat, I'd like rubs for meat, I would like anything to do with barbecuing. But that is how obsessive I get over things. And like I say, they are often fads, and they come and they go. But one thing that I have been into since I was about 16 and not practicing, but just the concept and learning about it, is the gym. And I've been in and out of the gym over the years, and I get really into it for a period, and then I drop out, and I'm probably out of the gym for longer than I'm in the gym. But even when I'm out of the gym, I'm obsessed with learning about it. I love learning about bodybuilding and powerlifting and cardio and everything about the gym. New techniques on how to lift. Yeah, I've got here, I haven't been a practicing gym fanatic for all of those years. Let's say we've had an on and off relationship. But one thing I haven't stopped obsessing with is the learning about it. And you might ask, how does this relate, Josh? Well, it's actually part of the reason that I chose this topic today. I was learning about something called, and I will say this word probably multiple times throughout this message, and I will say it differently every single time. I've been learning about hypertrophy. 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 So what is hypertrophy? It is the concept of growing muscles. For us to do this, we need to tear down muscle fibers so that they repair themselves bigger and stronger, causing you to look a bit like Felix in the back. So maybe you didn't know this, but we build by tearing those muscle fibers. Only by breaking down those muscle fibers are we able to build them back bigger and stronger, allowing us to repeat the process all over again, and this is how you grow. And guess what? It is thought that training to failure is considered the best way to do that. So that's right. In order to grow, you have to fail. It's literally how our body works. In the gym, if you are trying to grow, failure is key. So what does that mean in the gym practically? So ordinarily, somebody in the gym would pick a weight that they thought they could lift or knew that they could lift, and they would say, I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 of that weight. And they would get on the bench press, and they would load up the weight, and they would push 3 sets of 10 out. They would rack it, and they'd get off, and I feel a bit stronger and a bit better for that. Hypertrophy, or training to failure to achieve hypertrophy, means that instead of 3 sets of 10, you might load up the weight a bit more. Or perhaps you keep the same weight, and you say, I'm just going to lift this. You're not trying to achieve 10. You're not trying to achieve 3 of 10. You're not trying to achieve 2 of 10. You're lifting that to the point that you cannot lift anymore. So let's say you go to 7 and it's stuck there, and your friend behind you picks up the right weight, racks it for you, and you get off. And you feel rubbish because you go, I didn't achieve 10. I didn't achieve a set goal. But you've lifted to the point that you cannot lift anymore. By doing that, you break down those muscle fibers grow back bigger and stronger, and we grow bigger and stronger. We repeat the whole process again, and next time you lift more. Maybe instead of 7, you go to 12, because we're not confounded by that set of 10. If you do this, you're training to failure. So I ask again, are you training to failure? So let's move out of the gym and instead substitute those muscle fibers for our emotion, for intelligence. We train to the point of failure. We put ourselves emotionally in a vulnerable place where we think we cannot do what we're going to do, and perhaps you don't. And you fail, and you grow back bigger and stronger, and you repeat the process again. There's no, I've done this, and now I can achieve the success. Perhaps that's an ongoing thing for years, forever. You keep going, you repeat the process again, and you fail, and you fail, and you fail, but you're bigger, and you're stronger, and you've grown. immersing yourself intellectually with subjects that you would deem out of your depth, putting yourself in a situation that you will fail, breaking down those fibers and building knowledge that you wouldn't have known without forcing yourself into that situation, or setting out on a journey to achieve a particular goal that is difficult and there's a high chance of failing, perhaps even publicly. So my bottom line is, don't be afraid to fail, especially with Jesus on your side. So often, many of us are so scared to fail, we don't even try. So I want to put up a scripture now. It's Numbers 13:27 to 33. And to give you a bit of backstory, God has promised Abraham the promised land. And Moses is taking the Israelites to this promised land, and he's asked the spies to go and have a look to see what's the land like. Could we have them? Are we big enough? Are we strong enough? And 10 spies came back and they said, it was impossible. We cannot do it. And 2 came back, Joshua and Caleb, and they said, I think we've got it. We'll be all right. We got God. Josh has been hitting the weights recently. He'll be all right. So they didn't go. And as a result, they had to wander around for 40 years before getting there. So let's dive into it quick. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruits. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. When we saw descendants of Anak there, I hate trying to pronounce any names of places or people in the Bible. Amalekites. They were doing that hypertrophy stuff, I think. They live in the Negev. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country. And the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they explored. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of the Anak come from the Nephilim. We see the grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. So it's funny. 10 people saw a situation in which they thought they could fail, and they said, nah, let's not do it. And Joshua and Caleb, they said, no, I think we've got it. And who cares? Who cares if we don't do it? Let's give it a shot. As a result, it took them 40 years to get there. And there's no way of knowing, but who's to say that had they not gone for it, that they couldn't have done that in 40 days? It's funny because Joshua and Caleb, the 2 spies who came back and said, let's give it a go. Let's have a go at this. They were the only 2 who went on to succeed. They were the ones risking failure. And it also turns out that journey, they failed multiple times. We won't dive into it today. Feel free to look into it. But in that 40 years of getting to the promised land, they failed along the way. But they still did it. They didn't let failure or the prospect of failure stop them. So I would say if you always avoid potential failure, then you avoid the potential for growth. One of the best parts of coming to church or being a Christian, other than getting to come here and sit in the warm and listen to me fail to say words, is grace. And for those of you that don't understand the concept of grace or know what grace is, it effectively means that God wants absolutely nothing from you for his love. It's unconditional. You can do anything, good or bad, and God will love you. He'll love you exactly the same, regardless. There is no requirement for you to do or be anything, and he will love you. In fact, you don't even need to be in church or a Christian for that love. You have it. You might not want it, but you've got it. You have it regardless. But with this grace, with this unconditional love, I think that also means there is no need to be afraid. There's no need to be afraid to fail. We've already established that failure allows us to grow physically, emotionally, intellectually, and now we've got God on our side as well. Where is the fear of failure? It says in Proverbs 3:5, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. I think as humans, we like to see an end goal, a process to get there, and then achieve it. And because of that, we become disheartened when we fail. We go, this is what I was trying to achieve. This is the way I was going to achieve it. That didn't work. I failed, so screw it. Not doing it. I can't do it. I even tried, and I didn't get there, so I'm not doing it. But we have to remember that God is bigger than all of that. After all, it's his will and not your will. So the thing that you're trying to achieve is his will. Or if it's his will, perhaps it's not his will, and that's why you didn't achieve it. We speak of his will and not ours, so we have to understand that the process of getting to our success has to go through him. Perhaps there's a lesson he wants you to learn. Perhaps that is why you failed. Not because he doesn't want you to achieve what you've set out to achieve, but because through that process of failure, he wants you to learn something. He wants you to grow. He wants you to get bigger and stronger along the way. Perhaps there's someone you need to pick up. You can't just set out to an end goal and get there if there's someone who's meant to be with you. Perhaps he may even want you to discover a new end goal. That's why we lean on his understanding and not ours. A new end goal. We think this is what we're trying to achieve, but really we're meant to be somewhere else. So when I was coming up with this topic, I had a kind of vision of what I wanted to speak about, and I put it in and I took it out. I couldn't figure out a good way to put it in, and me and Phil spoke about this message, and I was telling him this story that kind of helped me along the way of creating this message today, and Phil said, well, that works. Let's put that in. It's really good. So what led me to this is, for those of you that don't know, I said earlier, I'm a qualified electrician, but I've kind of stepped up the roles now, and I'm a contract supervisor for a facility management company, which is a fancy way of saying, you tell me something's broken, I'll tell you how much it's going to cost to fix, whether that's me or somebody else. But one of our clients that we look after their building, and it's a massive building. It's full of labs. They're mainly startup companies, little science gurus doing all sorts of crazy stuff, and it blows my mind. I love working there. I do 1 day a week there, and I pop in And I normally have a chat with a couple of the guys, and they tell me what's going on, and I nod and go, yeah, that sounds really good. And it's gone straight over my head. But one of the labs there has combined biology and chemistry all together with artificial intelligence. In short, they basically do experiments. This is my version of what they do, okay? They do experiments. They take the data from those experiments and they input it to a computer. The computer then goes, processes all of that and says, this is what you need to do next. And they then do that and input all of that data again into the computer. And the computer says, that didn't work, let's try this. But they rely so much on that computer that that computer can and has changed the end goal of their experiment. So they set off trying to achieve one thing, input all of that information as they went, failing in the experiments, and the computer said, let's try something different. Let's have a new end goal. So I like to imagine God as AI. But instead of artificial intelligence, it's all-knowing intelligence. So we go about our lives with end goals, with achievements that we want to achieve. And we input our data into God, and He's watching, and He's taking all of this information in, and He's saying, oh, look, that was a good decision. Oh, that was a bad decision. Fail. And He puts steps in place. And He says, try this. Do this instead. How about this? Let me give you this person to take with you. Let me give you this pocket of information. Let's send you to church this Sunday and give you a message that you need to hear. Or perhaps He changes the end goal. So going back to the lab that I was talking about, they could effectively, I don't know what they're working on, nor could I share it with you if I did know. Not that I would understand any of it anyway. But from speaking to the guys there, my understanding is they could start with trying to look for a cure for baldness, right? And end up with a cure for cancer. Because they are not relying on their own understanding. They're relying on the AI. The AI makes that decision for them. It says, let's try this instead. You could argue that they failed. They were looking for a cure for baldness. They didn't get it. They failed. But surely, the end goal that they did achieve, that cure for cancer, you could argue that's a better success than looking for the cure for baldness. Who wants a cure for baldness? If you've got a cure, if you've got a cure for cancer, it's better. And that's what God's doing with our lives. He's changing that end goal. He's saying, I know you want that cure for baldness, but I have got a cure for cancer just here. All you have to do is just rely on me, go through the failures, pick up those lessons, grow bigger, grow stronger, and then you can achieve this end goal. It's so much better than your end goal. Just drop your end goal and look at my end goal instead. Perhaps we could even achieve something more successful than we could ever imagine if we were just not afraid to fail. So I want to encourage you, don't be afraid to fail, but let failure train you. Let failure grow you. That's it. Let's pray.